I don't know if I can blame capitalism on this or not, but I've been having
You
issues
can blame everything on
falling asleep
capitalism.
on time. You probably can, exactly, but I've been having issues falling asleep on time for quite a while now, and I found a alternative medicine source of something that actually helped me balance out my work to being awake to being asleep time, and it's quite literally, surprise surprise, catnip. They actually sell these little 4 human pills of catnip that you can consume, and it makes your anxiety, makes your everything go away, and that you sleep like an absolute baby. And apparently, it's not addictive or very bad for you. So it feels like I cheated the system in a way.
Huh. What is catnip? I've never understood it.
It's a herb. That it's literally just like a special kind of grass that cats for some reason really like. But I just looked it up for you, Yugopnik, and you're apparently it's on NCBI. There is evidence of it helping cats and baby chickens sleep. So,
well, it's not. There's a different word that they use for it when it comes to it being served to humans, but I can't remember it right now. Nor will I Google it.
Are you sure it doesn't have there's no THC component? Because sometimes people mix THC oil in
no, dude. Nothing like that. It costs 5 US cents for like 100 pills. Yeah, it's literally a bunch of grass.
Yeah, write the name of the equation. I'll look it up for my own interest later.
We're going to have Papa Yugopnik's alternative medicine hour in the next podcast. We just list all the strange herbs you've bought for chickens and cats that help you sleep.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving that shit to fight COVID or whatever dewormer shit. So I was like, okay, if that fucking thing apparently works for some idiots, then I might as well try some chicken shit and some cat shit for my sleeping disorder, and apparently it worked. So the next episode, expect me to defend ivermectin as well. I don't know. I can't intro. You guys intro. I cannot fucking intro anything.
Well, I'm very curious about this literary thing you're going to be quoting.
Okay. I'll do it now. Okay. As we all know, one of the most important literary experiences of the 21st century is the video game series Far Cry. In one of its installments, a literally insane pirate / terrorist / dictator of a small Oceania island once said, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." Well, ladies and gentlemen, this insane small island dictator probably understands more about the system than many of your family members. We live and experience the daily dread of everything that we are accustomed to and that we think is normality when it comes to the way we have organized society. Yet we look at the ones that are trying to do something about it and actually change it as those who are insane. Yet we who support it and live it every day and do not struggle against it are the ones who are truly insane. Welcome to the 4th episode of the program, where we will be talking about arguably the last extremely serious topic, at least for the next 4 or 5 episodes, which is promptly titled The Definition of Insanity / Limits of Capitalism. I'll let the gentleman take this away from me before I start talking for like an additional 15 minutes and start making less and less sense. Don't blame me for this. They made me do the intro. I suck at doing intros. Thank you
did
very
beautifully,
much.
Heavy.
That was wonderful.
It was absolutely beautiful. TLDR, we live in a society.
Amen, brother.
All right, so The general gist of today's episode will be a discussion of the general issues of capitalism, why it is a system that we do not want and we do not like, and regardless of what we think, will implode on itself and continue to harm humanity, if not lead to our direct extinction if we don't get rid of it. So I thought maybe we can just juggle a bunch of ideas and then give our silly little examples of what can, I guess, be connected to the general crappy situation of capitalism. I guess I could start with that if it's okay with you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
I had this very stupid fucking memory that come to mind the other day when we were preparing for this episode. When I was very young, all right, like me and my family, we grew up fairly poor when we were young, right? And basically, my dad had this shitty old, like, third or fourth hand Renault or Renault, I don't fucking care, French is a waste of time. Very garbage car, absolute fucking piece of shit. He bought it for the equivalent of maybe like $200 or something. It was garbage. But basically, the reason that I want to mention how is so sometimes it would work. Sometimes you get in the car and then you just like turn the key, you turn the ignition, and it would turn on. But other times what would happen is you try again, and the ignition, and it doesn't even make a noise. So what my dad would have to do is he would have to manually push the car from the driveway into a nearby hill and just kind of let it roll down the hill. And then he would have to run behind the car, jump in the driver's seat, and then somehow, for some reason, it would turn on. No, that's not the only fucking thing. It had a million other things. The fucking water cooling, or the cooling system in it had like holes in it, so my dad had to ride with the gallon like jugs basically of water, and then he would have to stop every 15 minutes to fill it up so the engine wouldn't overheat. It was a fucking piece of shit car. The reason I'm even telling this story is whenever I think of the boom and bust cycles of capitalism, it's kind of like this. And I'll qualify what I mean, because for the uninitiated, right, capitalism is a cyclical system, right? It doesn't stay stagnant or constant. There are points of, like, we can call it prosperity or booms, and then there are busts where everything goes to shit. The reality, though, is most people's lived experience is that the boom is not really that much of a boom. It's kind of just okay. And the bust is a really bad fucking bust. Just kind of like the car. The car it would work sometimes, but it would still be shitty. That's the boom. And the bust would be when you had to fucking roll it down the hill and it wouldn't turn on.
And then there's the boom where it explodes, but we'll get to that later.
yeah, exactly right. But yeah, so thank you for entertaining my stupid story, but how about this? This is the intro topic, boom and bust cycles. Do you want to take it from me, JT?
Sure, yeah. And that's a great story. It reminds me of my first car. I bought a 1981 Datsun 280Z as my first car, and this was a little side anecdote here. If you guys don't know, in America we all drive automatics because we're stupid and don't want to row our own gears. But this, I had never. I knew in theory how to drive a manual, but I had never done it in practice. So I was on Craigslist, which is like just classified ads, and I saw it. This Datsun go up. Real cheap, and I was like, I messaged the guy. I'm like, I'll take it. I'll be there after work. And so I wrangled a friend of mine to take my car back after I drove there, and I drove this thing back. No idea how to properly drive a manual. And anyway, long story short, it also needed to a bit of a rolling start. But hooray for old cars. But yeah, so for boom and bust cycles, I think you're on the mark there. That for the average person, the boom isn't all that great. It's a very unequal thing. So when the economy is booming, it's the people at the top, those who already have capital, that really reap the benefits of it. And then when a crash comes along, when the bust comes, it's the normal people who suffer, and their quality of life goes way, way down. So for example, in the 2008 financial crash and the recession that followed, my family. The
pandemic now.
Yeah, and the pandemic now, exactly. It's the same thing. Like, my family is very, very well off. Like, I don't know how much exactly my parents or my dad makes, but it's a lot. He works in pharmaceuticals, which not great. I've got my dad in
same as my girlfriend. Woot, woot.
Yeah, I've got
maybe your dad can find her a job, a better place, position.
Yeah, if you want to work at Pfizer.
Commies helping commies out, doing well in capitalism, bro.
Yeah.
Come on, we can do some shit. You can.
Let's network.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got
So
connections
good.
there. I've got connections in
What's your fucking
oil and
LinkedIn
gas.
URL, bro? I'll hook you up with my girl, man. You know, come party with us over here on the Balkan coast, bro. We got some good blow, man. You know,
All right, go on.
private jets up in this. Bitch. Yes,
Anyway,
sorry, please go
yeah.
on.
So, like I was saying, I mean, my family was very well off, and this was, 2006, 2007. We had just moved to Connecticut, like nice, really big house. I was, I don't even remember how old I was at the time, 15, 16, maybe something like that. And then the crash happened, and we had been in that house for maybe a year or so, and we had to move. Like it was enough to affect people in that, very close to what we'd consider, quote unquote rich, like the top whatever percent, 3-5%, something like that. But it just goes to show how extreme your wealth has to be to weather a bust. And that is how it works here in the States,
exactly.
at least. I mean, the people at, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, that level of wealth are the ones who benefit, the only ones who benefit. And everyone below them, 99%, more than 99% of the population suffers. And with each time this happens, it gets worse. The plight of the average person worsens. And this will continue forever until it eventually breaks our consumerist system. Because eventually, the bust is going to be so severe and the cumulative effects of each previous bust that we're not going to have anything left. We're not going to be able to consume the products that we produce with our labor. And that, I think, is a big problem. But you guys take it from there. Tell me about your situations.
I really wish there was a sort of sound effect that we can insert into this podcast of every time I'm shaking my head, it can actually be making a sound effect, because otherwise the listeners will not understand just how much I agree with what these two assholes are saying. But I cannot agree more, which is, that the common point these monkey libertarians like to come up with is that the market has this ingenious fucking way of quote unquote self-correcting. It is supposed to be destroying the unethical or unproductive parts of the market, and it's turning them into these alternatives, which are, as it happens to be, almost always supposed to be also even more profitable. But when it actually comes to like larger economic shifts, that's literally never the case. I mean, the market doesn't really self-correct. It just postpones its problems for a later date, which is what eventually leads to what my children we can call ballooning and crashes. I don't know. For example, I'll use the same example that you did because it's so perfect. For example, median income levels have not moved pretty much an inch, yet private property and real estate prices for the last 30 years have absolutely skyrocketed. So if we put our market thinking hats on and see how this market is supposed to self-correct, we're going to see what happened in 2007, 2008, and 2009, which is what? Oh, let's just give everybody a loan, and that's going to help us with the quote-unquote accommodation problem that everybody's facing, which is a fancy way of saying we got to postpone this because we have no idea what to do right now. So great, now banks are giving loans left and right to people that very often cannot cover the loan that they actually got, which leads to a massive balloon and a massive crash. And then who ends up being both homeless and with a massive debt again? The everyday individual. And I really get pissed off when these idiots lose their shit at this specific argument, because they tend to say, 2008, 2009 happened because of a few specific banks and a few specific corporations and these individual bankers and CEOs which did this specific thing which led to it. I mean, no, that's not the case. These people saw an opening in the market and they filled it. Someone always would have filled it. Why was there an opening, a tumor of sorts in the market in the first place? Which, by the way, still exists to this day. I mean, nobody can buy a fucking house anymore. So It was because the system couldn't figure out what to do with the given problem that was put in front of it. Hell, one could say that the system didn't and doesn't even compute that it needs to do anything about something like that. The needs of the common man are completely irrelevant to the model itself. So don't let them tell you economic crises are natural, especially when you can obviously see that every time they happen, the system readjusts in an even more fucked up way for you than before. It does not work.
But I just want to add to that also is that we need to keep in mind that when capitalism crashes, most of the time it's because of no external impulse. There's no war that's happened, no sudden, like, I don't know, massive agricultural shortage, nothing. It just happens out of the blue.
Exactly.
Unlike when you compare with socialist countries, for example, to give the example of the USSR, for example, which throughout its 70-some year existence did not have a single economic crash because of internal factors. Of course, there was invasion and whatnot. This, of course, can't be helped. But otherwise, not a single economic crash. But what I would like to kind of like pinpoint is, I really like this argument, but it's not my favorite argument. The argument in which we kind of appeal to the common sense of the average people, and we say, look, capitalism, when there has boom and bust cycles, and when it crashes, basically the richest of the rich still manage to either at least maintain their wealth or still get massively wealthy, as we've seen during the pandemic now. There's been a wealth transfer of over $4 trillion to the richest, 0.01% or something like that. Literally, like a few dozen names that have grown like massively, unfathomably in wealth. Meanwhile, the vast majority of people lose out. And even the old stupid market mantra that is, a rising tide raises all boats, or whatever the fuck whatever the stereotypical phrase is, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What really happens is that this rising tide disproportionately affects the very largest of the boats, and most of the small boats just somehow still manage to fucking sink underneath this lovely market-driven economic growth. But the reason I don't like this argument is because it doesn't underpin the irrationality of capitalism, which is that boom and bust cycles are a result of what Marx termed overproduction. It's a crisis of overproduction. What this means concretely is that there are too many commodities produced. Now, just asking the average person, if you were to tell them, hey, we have too much milk and potatoes and fucking, I don't know, bedding covers and shit being produced, too many cars and too many window framings and too many iron pipes, whatever the fuck, most people will be like, yeah, I mean, maybe we can scale down the production a bit, but it's never too bad to have too much of things that can be at least reworked into something else. Not under capitalism, though. Under capitalism, if you produce too much of something, that means you can't sell it, it drives the price down, and then it leads to the infinitely stupid policy of basically destroying perfectly good products and commodities. Perfectly good. They can be used as is. To destroy them, get rid of them, burn them, or whatever else, just drain them. For example, what happened during the pandemic was milk prices in the United States were being affected of dairy. So what these massive conglomerates in the US had to do was dump thousands upon millions of gallons of I'm not sure if it's millions, but vast amounts of milk just down the drain, because otherwise it was affecting the price signaling of dairy products, which would have affected profits. Now, think to yourself, in a logical system, would we be dumping perfectly good milk or whatever else, or burning clothes, perfectly good clothes? That's another thing that happens. Because, it might harm products a bit, because the system is just so irrational that it can't handle the fact that we just kind of overshot how much we're supposed to be producing, right? It's just kind of It depends on which audience you're talking to. On one side, you can discuss the irrationality of it to kind of underpin the stupidity of the system. On the other side, you can kind of appeal to people's direct needs and tell them, like, hey, yeah, during this pandemic or during this crisis, you lost a home, or basically you can't pay your bills, or your kids can't go to college, or you can't afford medical care because the bills cost too much and you don't have any income anymore because you lost your job. Meanwhile, the richest people, or your boss, or whoever the fuck, has been, seeing massive records and has bought their fucking third summer home and their fourth mega yacht and fucking, to the end of it. So that's just my general point that I want to tie together.
Yeah, here in Texas, we had that pretty brutal cold snap that the state's not accustomed to, and our electrical grid certainly wasn't up to. But during that freeze, where we had people died and pipes burst all over the state and houses flooded and stuff like that, if you went to the grocery store, there was no milk on the shelf. There was no water. There were no paper towels. There were no heaters. There were no potatoes. All this food stuff, and that was the same stuff that was being just destroyed across the country because prices were not there to support the products. At the end of the day, it's not the products themselves that are of concern to the capitalists who own the corporations that produce them. The only thing is the price or the value, whatever you want to call it, of the product being produced. I mean, if whether it's, linen or food, it doesn't matter. It's.
Did you say linen? Mark's just quaking right now.
I know. I did. I did say linen. I'm glad you caught it.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's pretty much all I had. It's
fucking revisionists.
These the challenge that we see is that nothing.
There's not enough linen.
There's not enough
linen. Yes, linen. Yes.
Yeah, it's these challenges and problems compound. When first there's an economic crisis, so we start dumping food, and then people can't find food when they need it. When there's a collapse of the electrical infrastructure, and it just gets worse and worse. And that, I think, is a great little glimpse of how the whole system works in its entirety and how it's going to continue working. It's just going to keep getting worse.
Exactly.
I would
right.
go even. I would go even further than what you guys just very eloquently displayed. I would go as far as saying that there is no such thing as an economic crash, because an economic crash would insinuate that the economy is not working the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And yes, one can make the argument, which we are making, that it's not working the way it's supposed to be for the vast majority of people that are living inside of the given system. But
it's working just well for the people who it's intended for, the capitalist class.
And not even just the people, for the purpose that it's been created for, to create inherent and unstoppable growth, to print as much wealth and as much money without ever stopping, to roll as a bigger and bigger and bigger snowball down the hill of economic prosperity, quote unquote. It's doing every single one of those things, no matter which, like be it 2008, be it 1921, be it fucking World War II. Capital has always grown, and the availability of capital maybe has been limited on who just gets to interact with it. But the system itself, I'll give it to the libertarians or whatever, the system itself has perpetuated itself very successfully. Now, yes, it might be leading to people quite literally dying of starvation in every single corner of the world, but that's never been the objective of capitalism. We moved from aristocrats ruling us and whipping us into the new merchant class building up their sort of vision of the world, which eventually, just like with the aristocrats before them, got out of hand as well. And the system is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And yes, it is hurting the majority of us, but it does not feel like it is in crisis. And therefore, when a system does not feel like it is going to be in crisis, it is never going to stop itself. The ball is continuously going to be growing larger and larger down the hill. That's why it's important to build a wall in front of this big ball and to stop it. So we shouldn't expect rationality from people that are, as you said, profiting from the system the most, nor from the system itself to somehow have like a break, like an inbuilt brake that's going to stop it before it crashes into anything. We need to either make it crash or make it stop, because it's continuously going to roll. If there's literally 0 people on planet Earth, and there's a few computers and CPUs that still work, that can still do still mine Bitcoin, it's still going to mine Bitcoin. It's going to be the last little cell of infrared light on planet Earth, even after we engage in the new fucking ice age or whatever. Unless we do something about it, quite literally, it's going to keep fulfilling its function. That's it.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that ties nicely into a general point of capitalism kind of holding the sacred cow of profit over everything else. And that's why it doesn't seem to care, because it's an unfeeling system, and those who are forced to comply with its measures, be they the proletariat or the ruling class, even the capitalists themselves, they're not masters of the capitalist system. They're slaves to it, just in a different kind of way. They can't control capitalism or capital any more than we can. In fact, it's the other way around.
Exactly.
It controls them, and this leads to kind of the point of infinite growth on a finite planet, I think, which is one of the stupidest aspects of capitalism that people don't really talk about much, which is a shame, I think. But yeah, the general gist of the idea is exactly as it sounds: infinite growth on a finite planet. Capitalism is predicated on further and further economic growth. There is no such thing as, you know what, we're producing too many carbon emissions, so this year we need to have degrowth. We need to have a 1.2% reduction in the size of our economy. This is not something that capitalism can do, right? In fact, if this were even taken as a policy, capitalism would crash, because, as previously mentioned, it's a system predicated on further and further profits to be reinvested into the circuit of capital, which would then garner further profits, which are then reinvested, which would garner further profits ad nauseum. What do you guys think of this beautiful little this add-on, this DLC of capitalism?
Yeah, it really is, like you said, it's tremendously stupid. So take oil and gas, for example. There is a finite supply of stuff you can dredge from the depths of the earth and sell for a profit. As soon as that's gone, that's it. There's no more. GG. I mean, you can't find more of it. And yet they realize this, but they are still beholden to the market forces that demand that they keep producing at ever greater rates and keep growing every single year. And that is impossible. It is physically impossible to keep doing that forever, which is what capitalism demands. So eventually, they're going to keep doing this to the very end, and then they're going to find out, there's nothing left. What do we do? And then there's going to be a real crisis. And that happens across the board, not just oil and gas. You cannot keep growing forever when there is a cap on what you can extract.
Exactly. Yeah, one could even make an argument that the necessity, what is necessary from us is not necessarily degrowth, which puts emphasis on the everyday individual, consuming less plastic straws because it's killing the goddamn turtles, but concentrating on just how much of the damage that is being done to the planet is caused by a profit-seeking motive, which unjustly and in a very disbalanced manner leads to very high margins of profitability for a very, very small number of people. And this, again, not being directed as a negative comments towards those people. I mean, it is fuck them, but they're just fulfilling their position in what the system itself requires somebody to inherently fulfill. But particularly, I'm not afraid of an incoming climate catastrophe because I know people are smart. So if you're living in an area which will be underwater in the next 50 years, you can just simply sell your house to Aquaman. Seriously though, almost every corner which is cut in big business, I love that American term, cutting corners, when you're cheating the system, cutting corners. But yeah, every single corner which is being cut in business is a consequence of increased profit seeking. So even if we have some sort of I hope people notice this in every episode, and I think all of us do, we always try, all three of us, we always try to try and actually see things from the perspective of a pro-capitalist individual. So just listen to me now. Now I'm going to try to do this. So even if we do have some sort of market capitalist solution for example, massive CO2 emissions, the money to pay for such a thing, let's be honest, is not going to come from the pockets of the owners of those industries, also known as quote-unquote billionaires, but out of your pockets. Capitalist propaganda is going to continue being like, consume less, you plebeian, and it's your fault this shit is happening, plastic straw drinker. These are just the beginning, those things I just quoted, they're just the beginning of putting the whole weight of climate disaster on the working class, which we've been calling the so-called consumer for the last 200 years. Again, no matter how much the market adapts to not destroying the planet as quickly as it is, because again, it's going to have market motives to do so, most of the bill is going to be footed. What the fuck do you Americans say? When you foot the bill, it's going to be footed. It's going to be fisted. Most of the bill is going to be fisted up your ass, my friend. That's what I'm saying. And you should not be okay with this, by the way. Somebody coming in and telling you, blaming you because you drive a fucking Dodge Ranger that has 500 horsepower. Yeah, maybe you should grow like 2 inches of your penis and stop driving a Dodge Ranger. But it's also not your fault. The planet is burning now.
For your information, sir, I'll have you know that Ford makes the Ranger, and that is a small pickup truck. That is a reasonably sized vehicle.
Me no spico americano, okay?
There's no such thing as fucking reasonably sized in the United States. Jesus Christ. Fucking
You're right.
every fucking car is a glorified tank. Jesus.
Yeah, I've seen, like, recently I saw there's a truck that was lifted so high that, like, my head barely came up to the wheel well. Like, it was so big. Anyway, yes, but you got...
I love how you guys are talking about the cars and size. I'm immediately thinking dicks and tits. But I watched this TikTok where this guy's reacting to biggest tits in the world. And it's, like, listing out countries, the top 20 countries. And it's, like, on number 17 or something, and it's going towards number 1, and he's an American. He's like, we're probably going to be like in the top 5 of this shit because we're this internationalist country, and we got these sports and universities, and we got all this food, and we're rich and wealthy, and maybe I don't know what argument he was using, but he was like, probably we got the people with the biggest tits here. And push comes to shove, and in top 5 boob sizes, US is number 4 or something. And then I opened the comment section, and the number 1 comment is, yeah, we have the largest tits because we also have the largest fucking body mass index. It's absolutely to be expected. But yeah, So, sorry for the little interlude,
that was fun. Anyway. But yeah, sorry to go on the car tangent, but what you were saying was correct, that the normal person is going to foot the bill. Like the other day, I saw BP, British Petroleum put out a document saying, here's how you can reduce your carbon footprint by changing your diet. I'm like, oh, thank you, British Petroleum. Yes, I will do that. I will reduce my carbon footprint.
By the way, in case you didn't know, British Petroleum, amongst other companies, were official sponsors of the, if there can be such a thing, of the invasion of Iraq. So, eat less fucking quinoa, and then you're gonna reduce your fucking carbon footprint.
Jeez, you got big BP decals on all the helicopters.
Fucking hell. They may as well have had, fucking hell. That and Shell and fucking Exxon, that's the American one, right?
Yeah, Exxon. And Exxon was the one that was doing all the cutting-edge climate research back in the 70s. I mean, they were among the first ones to understand the effects that their industry would have on the climate. And, instead of...
And then they... systematically hit it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Systematically hit it because it would have dug into profits. Yeah, fucking garbage system and garbage people. Fuck me. Sorry, go on.
No, you're right. That's the sentiment we all need to have. They buried that information. They had it. They chose not to make it public. They said, this is for internal eyes only. We are going to keep doing this despite the fact that we know what's coming down the pike. And they launched into one of the most expensive propaganda campaigns in human history to cover up the fact that what they were doing was essentially amounting to murder of millions of people over the course of the next decades.
Something that relates into this kind of, because you're on the point of advertising, and I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I just went on one of my fucking usual rants. Just how much I fucking hate the institution of advertising.
Yes.
And like it is one of this. This isn't even part of like this the fucking podcast. This is just me fucking ranting. The stupid.
Okay, doctor. I'm sorry, I work in the fucking industry. Okay.
Sorry. I know it's your livelihood, but let me shit on it for a bit, please. Right, you can shit on medicine afterwards.
Yeah, sell me some pills, bro. Sell me some pills. Oh, C vitamin works. I know it does.
Hey,
There's a reason pharmaceutical companies don't have advertising budgets, because they have doctors. We sell it for them. I'm kidding. I love you. But please do include this in the podcast.
Oh, I'm not taking this out. Yeah.
That's shitting. No, that's shitting on the, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
Go on, my friend, go on.
The thing I hate about fucking advertising.
Sell me something, you little walking advertisement.
Eat a dick and let me finish.
It's because I'm right. I am right. Yes.
Oh fuck. Anyways, my point being is that it is if you say sell me something one more fucking time, I swear. the issue.
I don't have to, because you're going to, because you're a doctor. You're a little billboard with 5 years of a university degree.
Habibi, coffee, best. Shinai. All right. My fucking point being is this: advertising is the idea that you don't actually need this money that could go to any better fucking thing. It could go into healthcare. It could go into fucking, I don't know, getting toys for orphans. Literally anything that's decent, right? Instead is used to basically psychologically trick you into thinking that you should get something that you don't actually need most of the time. Right? If you look at like advertising from like 80 years ago or so, it's usually about the product. They talk about the product, what's good about it, why it would be helpful to you. You know, they were a lot more honest. Now, all of a sudden, they're all trying to sell you a lifestyle. It could be something as fucking benign as a banana, but they'll show, you know, it's going to have beautiful people, usually on some sun-kissed beach or like coastline, and they're living their life. They're all young and, you know, full of, you know, just enjoying, having the best time of their fucking life, and they're trying to sell you this image. Right? The fucking image that if you eat this fucking banana, the ideology will somehow affect you and you'll become fucking a happy and go lucky, you know, fucking 23-year-old with bright eyes and the fucking future behind in front of them. I say that as if I'm a jaded fucking boomer. I'm not that much older than that age. Anyways, but
where's
you know
my
what
beach
I'm
and banana?
Yeah. But exactly right. And it's, again, the biggest stupidity of it isn't only that you're spending all this fucking money to convince people to buy shit that they don't need, it's that there's parallel development of this. Every company that competes in selling bananas, hypothetically, or whatever other fucking commodity, are all spending in their individual budgets on different advertising campaigns to convince you that my banana is better than that dude's banana, despite the fact that it came from the same farm.
Because it's the only thing that differentiates them. That is a brilliant point that actually not a lot of people make, which I'm very happy to hear coming from you, because a lot of people that do not work in advertising actually don't understand this. 99% of the differentiation between most brands is quite literally in their advertising and their positioning of how they're perceived by their given market demographic. More importantly, it's not even, most corporations do not create a product and then start pitching it to whoever happens to most co-identify with the given type of banana. No, when you're creating purple bananas, before you start selling the purple bananas, you do massive research and you find out just what sort of demographic and psychographic is going to be consuming your purple bananas, and then you target those specific advertisements towards them. So yes, this is a massive amount of capital which goes towards something that is quite literally useless. But why is there this necessity for advertising? It's because there are so many corporations competing in the same industry. Why are so many corporations competing in the same industry? Because there is always a niche that you can find from which you can profit without giving any sort of actual value to the end consumer.
Something which also isn't spoken of that much, which is the psychological effect, the negative psychological effect of being advertised to 24/7. Literally every day, everywhere you walk out, everything you look at practically is trying to advertise something to you, and it plays on angles of insecurity or maybe on things about your character that you wouldn't even consider otherwise. But it tries to sell you this idea that you are not a complete human being until you buy this fucking banana or whatever the fuck, and then all of a sudden, once you consume, then all of a sudden you become this, fully formed Übermensch, and then, you eat too much potassium and then you get diarrhea from fucking taste testing all the different competing brands of banana. But yeah,
exactly. And the additional reason, because I don't want to sound like I undermine just the reason why advertising exists. Yes, it exists because there's 1,000 brands for one product, even though probably 3 brands could do as good of a job, if not better. But number 2 is because the quality between most of these is on the same level, which is very poor. So the only thing that can be differentiated between them is how closely related you feel to one of the brands versus the other brands. Us Slavs know it very well with being the lovers of Adidas and alcoholism, just like the people in the UK are fans of Nike and stabbing each other with large katana blades, and in the US walking around in pajamas and shooting up their schools. But for example, when we were talking about quality, I think it can be a nice little window into the discussion of planned obsolescence, which is always very interesting and is always a very good point to bring up when it comes to just how much the system doesn't work. And I want to just bring up not even an allegory, but a little story from 2 weeks ago. My grandpa and grandma, who I kid you not, just threw out their washing machine that they bought in what was like the 1980s. That shit was built to last in a world not primarily ran according to money. I'll bet half of my liver that this new shit from Gorenje or something, which is also, by the way, Gorenje is an enterprise founded in good old Yugoslavia, but now ran for profit. I bet half my liver that it will go defunct the second the warranty runs out. I mean, I think I've spent like at least over $500 just this month alone on my old fucking Beamer, German engineering my fucking ass. Maybe a Lada is ugly and runs like shit, but a blind dude with 2 chromosomes and no arms would probably figure out how to fix it. Unlike this fucking thing that needs a team of 100 Japanese motherfuckers. But yes, let's go into the discussion of planned obsolescence, which I would argue, if little Yugopnik, little child me, who was introduced to capitalism, was to hear about the argument of planned obsolescence, maybe it would have become a communist much, much earlier. Because this is, in my opinion, this is the main thing that this shit sells us. Not, okay, yeah, we talked on the market adapts itself. Oh, it can even eventually save the environment, even though it's destroying the environment. Oh yes, advertising in the short term is bad, but maybe in the long term it then can actually introduce you to the product you really need. Blah blah blah. Many of these arguments, but planned obsolescence is a counter thesis to the main thing it's trying to sell us. You will get the best shit. You will get the best shit. You will not be driving around in a Lada, and yet planned obsolescence itself teaches us that the main thing capitalism is trying to sell us is absolute bullshit. It doesn't work. It's quite literally the opposite of what it's trying to sell us.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Just in case it was lost in translation, a quick definition of planned obsolescence is, for those who don't know, the idea that under capitalism, basically products are produced not to last, but instead they have a planned period of function before they will inevitably and intentionally break, so that you will be forced to go and buy new, whatever, like a new commodity, new product, whatever it might be. And the idea behind this is to maximize profits, because if you have something that you buy once and use for 30 years, they're not going to make as much money as if they make something that intentionally breaks after 2 years, so you have to buy 15 of them across those 30 years. But sorry, JT, you want to say something?
No, I was just
You
gonna...
see, I'm sorry, JT, but you see how much respect I have towards our listeners, and I understand that they probably know what planned obsolescence is. But my boy Hakeem, which he's wiser than me. He's wiser than me. I'm closer to the west. He's further to the west. By being further to the west, he's not as biased and he's more based than I am. So I expect you guys to actually know this basic thing called planned obsolescence. But I keep forgetting that you people don't even know where Ireland is. So obviously you're not going to know what fucking planned obsolescence means.
Savage.
So yes, I apologize, brother JT. Yes, Habibi, please go on.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry
You're
to cut
right.
you off. Sorry, I just sorry again to cut you off. Fuck. This just reminds me. Again, we're not shitting on Americans. Blah blah. It's just fun to point this out. But I remember seeing this map where it's like average Americans are asked to point where Iran is on a map, and some of them point at the fucking U.S. or the middle of the ocean. or the Caspian Sea. Like, you couldn't get... What the fuck, man?
At least point to land. Yeah.
Okay.
What
So your
was
point,
I even
sorry.
going to say? No, I think what I was going to say is that it is very contradictory how this stuff works, because we are, Yugopnik, like you were saying, we are peddled these products as if they are the greatest thing ever. You will buy this and you will be complete. And yet that is completely runs counter to the fact that this is, at least the US and other hyper-capitalist societies, are very consumerist. It is based on the assumption that people will continue consuming endlessly. And that is not possible if these objects and products continue to function as they're supposed to. They need to break in order for this consumerist mindset, this consumerist system to continue to function. And if that's not the case, then capitalism itself ceases to function. So this is a critical thing that people don't really understand, and it's worth grappling with, that everything is designed to be as poor quality as possible while still maintaining the veneer of the shininess and exclusivity.
And that also ties to the point of, again, like we mentioned, infinite growth on a finite world, where they, instead of trying to preserve material and labor and just effort from the human aspect, at least, the idea is let's just maximize profits. And I think the best example of this is it came out a couple of years ago, I believe, that the iPhone updates, they make little changes to the battery quality, so that basically your battery ends up getting shittier and like worse and worse with each iOS update, to the point that then you're like, fuck, my battery's fucked, I need to go get a new phone, despite the fact that the battery is more or less okay. Like, it's a little worse, but it's not as bad as the artificial software changes make it out to be. But I have a little, if you will humor me, I have a little anecdote that I can share about planned obsolescence. It's more or less a newer, I guess, invention in the do we say greater scale of things? No, that's not the fucking correct term. What do you Americans say? Grand scheme of things, whatever the fuck that means. Anyways, in the grand scheme of things, I know a lot of idioms, but I understand like scheme as in like schematic, but whatever, maybe I'm hyper-analyzing this. You understand what I mean, but English is fucking stupid. Anyways,
it doesn't have to make sense. It's just correct. We are just objectively correct in all of our phrases.
Exactly. Exactly right. That's why we foot a fucking bill. But anyways, what I was saying is, generally in the grand scheme of things, planned obsolescence is a relatively newer concept. Things that were built in the 60s and 70s and whatnot didn't have so much, right, of it. I'll use an example. My dad had bought an Italian hairdryer in the 70s. It was a Parlux, I think 3000. I don't remember the exact one, but I used this fucking thing until I think 2019. So This was a hairdryer that was in possession for multiple years in our family from the late 70s or so. So a minimum of 30 years, probably a lot longer. I don't know exactly when my dad bought it, but this fucking thing worked like a charm until my dumbass fucking basically smashed it on the floor, and the internal fucking unit split in half, basically. So if my dumbass didn't drop it, it would still probably be working. That's my fucking point. That you could buy a fucking hairdryer. I just noticed I curse a lot. It's okay. Americans will forgive me. You can buy a product and have it last almost half your lifetime. And now think about it. Like today, is there anything that you can think of that you can buy and it will last you from now, like 2021, until 2050? No, I can't. Fuck that.
Tesla stock.
That shit's going under. Fuck. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into that nonsense. But
It will, but it's still gonna last me.
He'll become massively rich in
$5
the he'll become massively rich in the process of fucking. Oh my god. We'll probably have an episode on him, or just the idea of billionaires at some point where we can just shit all over them. But that was just my stupid little anecdote. By the way, we're not fucking sponsored. I don't know if Parlux is good now. I don't know if they've been shit for a while. The last product I've had from them was from the fucking 70s, before I was born. So I think the next point There's a couple that we can talk about. I think one that is relevant that we can mention because it's very relevant to particularly the US, but everywhere else, is the concept of the reserve army of labor. Very theory, very boring, blah blah. But the general idea is this: under capitalism, in previous systems like slave-owning society and feudalism and whatnot, in the Asiatic modes of production, pre-capitalist formations, you never had a consistent workforce, right? There wasn't ever like work that needed to be done directly at all times. It was more sporadic. Capitalism can be said to be the first system in which we have a massive group of people that are perpetually employed, which is a kind of, we can say, a positive for capitalism. But on the inverse, if everybody is employed, as you may assume, or as you may understand, this massive group of working class people will have a lot of leveraging power, because basically if they're like, you can be like, hey, yeah, we all work and you need us to work to make your money, so we'll just strike and we'll stop working if you don't give us what we want. And if everybody's employed, then there won't be any group of people that can come in and fill that empty role if a group of workers is striking or not. And that's where the reserve army of labor comes in. Under capitalism, we have a system, we live in a society, we have a stupid system in which you have a perpetual group, massive group of people who are unemployed. The reason they're unemployed is twofold. Number one, to always drive down wages, because if you go up to your boss and you're like, hey, yeah, I want a raise, you should pay me more because you're a fucking piece of shit, you make so much money off me, I don't see any of it. He can be like, yeah, hit the bricks, or whatever you Americans say. We'll just get this guy off the street who's unemployed, and he's clamoring to get a job, he's begging me for a job, and now there's an opening. So he kicks you out and takes him in, and that dude will gladly work for no benefits and lower pay and whatnot, because at least he has a job that he can use to take care of his family, at least to some extent. That's number one. Number two, of course, is the aforementioned point, which is if, for example, a group of workers is striking and whatnot, then there's always a group of people that can fill in that room. So it's a positive for the ruling class, and it's a negative for the working class. And what it means, the TLDR, is capitalism basically perpetuates unemployment. You'll never have 100% employment under capitalism, because it goes directly against the interests of the ruling class and directly against the interest of the system. As compared to, for example, socialist countries, which across the board have had either 100% or near 100% employment rate, because it makes sense. There's always so much fucking work to do. Look at the United States, for example. The amount of effort and work required to, for example, renew American infrastructure, all the tunnels and roads and bridges and waterways and dams, all the shit that needs maintenance, all this nonsense that would need to be renewed or renovated or built anew across the vast American continent, would require millions of workers, probably, right? But even if it's done, then it wouldn't be taken from that angle of full employment. Instead, it's a sad attempt to save capitalism, like it was with the first New Deal, and now this bullshit new Green New Deal, etc., etc. But yeah, what do you guys have to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, that philosophy of having a reserve army of labor is baked into the very language of capitalism here in the States. Like, when you hear politicians throw around terms like full employment, here in the States, full employment doesn't mean everybody who wants a job has one. It means a sufficient number of people are employed while maintaining that reserve army of labor. It's like, I forget what percentage they count as full employment, but it's less than you'd think. They know it's a thing. They just bend the language to make it seem like, if you want a job, you've got one. It's very sneaky.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Anyways, so the point, general point being is, capitalism sucks as it perpetuates unemployment.
So continuing on the conversation point about perpetual unemployment and the many other things that this system is introducing into the everyday experience that we have, I love talking about dystopias and utopias. I don't know how much fun of a conversation this is going to be for the two other guys, but it's always very fascinating to me how nobody seems to be able to, not even capitalists themselves, to come up with a utopian or at least positive vision of a future created out of organizing the economy the way we currently do. Unless, I don't know, somebody is insane enough to think that cyberpunk is a sort of positive dimension of existence. There's just this sort of common acceptance by everyone that we'll either move into hyper ownership with, I don't know, corporations overtaking national institutions, that will dive even deeper into our escapist addictions and engage in these meta universes. Haha, I made a Mark Zuckerberg joke, so cool, where we no longer even, own anything material, even though that was the main promise of this fucking system, or the completely alienated and privately controlled automated labor pool, which will further destroy our identity as actual working class people and continuously solidify us as something we started identifying as, I don't know, fucking 200 years ago as quote unquote consumers, which live on some sort of version of barely enough to survive UBI. That, or I don't know, we turn into fascists guarding our perceived cultural or national borders from ecological migrants. But yeah, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about just how unimaginable a potentially positive future we can have if we continue the same direction that we're currently walking towards.
Yeah, I'll start it off with a good tweet I saw the other day. It was someone was saying, like, it's just absurd how tech companies will pursue like the worst ideas in history. Like the tweet was, the tech company says, "We finally created the torment vortex from the classic sci-fi story. Don't create the torment vortex." It's like all these things that are, warnings of dystopia from fiction and stuff, and that we've seen in sci-fi for years. It's like all these tech companies are actually pursuing these things. Like, hey, that's a good idea. I'm going to implement whatever sadistic online torture complex that was written in this Asimov story a bunch of years ago. But yeah, I think that's largely correct, that it is almost impossible to imagine a future in which capitalism still exists and the world hasn't turned into a dystopian hellscape. It's what we're going towards now is a future dystopia that lacks even the nice aesthetics that you see in movies like Blade Runner. Like, we're not going to be outside in a glittering neon city in the rain getting noodles from a street vendor. No, we're going to be like working in whatever salt mines or spice fields that is required of us in that future, because capitalism will always trend towards further extraction. There is no possible future beyond that. And I think
you're gonna fist the bill. I mean,
exactly. I mean, the boom and bust cycle that we've talked about is going to continue. The rich are going to get richer. The tendency towards consolidation is going to continue, with capital being consolidated in fewer and fewer hands, making a couple or even a single mega corporation with godlike power. And the rest of us are just we're screwed, and it's a very bleak way to look at the future. But I think that is unfortunately what we're headed towards, unless we can kind of break the back of this system.
The funny part about it, or not so funny part, it's actually a lot more terrifying, is with all the talk of future dystopias and how they look, capitalism is already so dystopian in its own kind of way. Even the modern era, I don't mean like, in 10, 15 years with what might possibly happen with this or that. I mean, currently, as it stands now, the very fact that most people will go to work, earn a salary, which they're already being underpaid. Not only are they being underpaid, but they're having their surplus value being extracted. And when they go home, they'll pay 60, 70, 80% of that wage to a landlord who exists only to be parasitically, lording over the land as they do, contributing nothing to the economy or to productive development, not contributing anything to society aside from I just happened to on a bunch of letters on a bunch of paper somewhere in a bank say that I own this land and therefore you owe me more than half of your monthly wage. That's already so terrifyingly dystopian, but it's so normalized that people don't even bat an eye when it happens. They actually just gladly hand over, or not so gladly, but they comply with such ridiculous requirements of the system. So it's just as dystopian as the system might get. I think the future will tend more towards this boring aspect of dystopia, where you're just gonna start renting more and not owning anything. Have you seen the World Economic Forum thing where it's like, oh, you'll own nothing and you will be happy? Have you seen that fucking thing?
No.
Oh my god. It's basically, it's like predictions for 2030, and it's like, this like this upbeat, happy fucking YouTube, like the YouTube basic music, that shit with the whistling, and then it's like, oh, things that'll change in 2030, and number one is you will own nothing and you will be happy, and it's just like this dude awkwardly smiling. And the idea behind
Live on the street, own an NFT of your house.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stupid idea behind that is like, we'll have a lot more convenience. That's how they try to frame it, by being able to rent whatever you want and then just giving it back, so you'll never actively own anything. And they're like, oh, you'll rent your car and your home and your summer, and your phone and all
And
that
your
kind
child and your wife and your body and your
exactly.
body parts,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
let's sell organs to some motherfuckers. Woohoo!
Oh my
Progress,
God.
baby.
Yeah.
And
Well, if-
NFTs on your liver, baby. Yeah.
The libertarians are hard as rock right now. but yeah, exactly right.
No. Libertarians don't get hard. That's their whole fucking.
Oh yeah, that's
problem.
right. Yeah, unless there's somebody underage in the room. But yeah.
Ooh, there we go. Okay, I love when they actually follow through on a joke.
Oh fuck.
It's very хорошо. Hvala puno, brate.
But yeah, so that's just the general fucking point. Capitalism just sucks, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's dystopian in all the most fucking boring ways. Like you said, no neon city, no fucking, everywhere you go, you see like it's in Cyrillic and in like Mandarin and in English, and everybody is just like a beautiful mix of ethnicities. No. It's gonna be the same pasty old white guys with low hanging balls, fucking, haven't had an erection in 30 years, but are like, yeah, my profits. It's.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So that's my point.
You wake up, you eat a cockroach smoothie. You walk over to your
Protein
massive
fortified
tablet, which is
Yeah.
supposed to be a window because you live 7 floors underground. Because everything overground is private property, which is not under rent because it's owned by like 5 people to increase rent prices. And then you sit down and enter the metaverse with your VR headset, in which you mine NFT coins 7,000 by actively moving your arms left and right, which turns on the electricity for your neighbor that's
Habibi, you get shuttled to your work pod, your underground work pod, in which you work your 12-hour shift, where they have this fucking the propaganda speaker that can keeps repeating that, good job, bestie.
good job.
Fuck me.
Hashtag
God.
grind set.
And there's a
This month we have hired 7 more people from a minority. We are very progressive.
Exactly. It's like, and Pride Month, everything just gets like the Pride flag, like veneer, everything, and then the second the minute ticks over, the hologram fades. It goes back to fucking gray. Oh my god. Gays consume.
Or like one day before Pride Month, a gay person actually quits, even though they would probably not allow quitting in that universe. But let's imagine a gay person quits, and there's like 5 private military corpos walk into the room, and they're like, "Okay, we're lacking a gay guy." And everybody's like, "So what does that mean? Who the fuck's gonna be gay for a month?" They put a gun in your fucking mouth. You gay, bro? You're like, "Oh no, I'm not. I'm fucking straight." No, you're gay for the month. Okay, I'm gay for the month. Okay, yes, the quota is filled, sir. Yes, we're good. We're good.
We need you to
can
tweet
do the
from our
Pride
corporate
thing,
account. Yeah.
Yeah, tweet from the corporate. But sir, we are having criticism that this person isn't actually gay. Okay, record him having anal sex with a person of his own gender. That is going to confirm that he's gay, or they, or she, or
as funny as you say, as funny as that is, as funny as the. Or like not funny, of course. We're not trying to make light of forced and coercive sexual encounters, but yeah. But it's interesting that how capitalism itself is such a coercive system that this supposed joke is actually like mirrored in a lot of other things that you're forced to do. For example, if you've ever worked in a corporate environment, I'm lucky to not have done too much of that, but you can probably comment on that. You're not allowed to criticize fucking anything. Right? And if you do, you are directly punished. And also, they keep an eye on your social media account. So if you were ever to write anything that goes even a little bit against, even on your own free time, it goes against the corporate party line, so to speak, then there will be consequences for you. And it's this sort of, not only in consuming habits, I've heard of this, I don't know if this is actually true, but I've heard in some businesses, particularly food and whatnot, you're not allowed to bring products of the competitors into the doors of said businesses, like, as you know, like I've at least in my part of the world, there's been some stories like that. But the general idea is, the coercive nature of capitalism, as much as we can make fun of it or make jokes that relate to it, at the end of the day ends up being kind of a sad mirror to our lives, where we're all coerced into stupid bullshit that we really don't want to do, but hey, it'll get us a paycheck. So that means having a reluctant anal sex as a straight man, so you can get your Bezos credits for the month.
Dude, this year I've spent over $5,000 on Nutella because I have to do blackface every day I go to work, so I can keep my job.
That's so fucked up.
Because there's no black people in my part of the world. There's absolutely no black people. It's very rare, There's there's plenty of black people, like 1 in 100,000. But my job was my corporation I work for is US based, and they don't understand that actually in certain parts of the world, the places are not that racially diverse. So I go to this interview, right? And the person, the guy like interviewing me is like, okay, we have 10 positions open, 9 of them are filled, and the Americans are like, okay, the 10th position, we need to hire somebody from an ethnic minority. And we asked them, can we hire somebody from a local ethnic minority? But they don't understand what that means. They think the whole world is basically the US.
They can't find any Pomaks?
No, but they don't know what Pomaks are. So the guy just slides over a Nutella jar over to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna burn in hell for the rest of my life, and I do what I need to do. And at this point, it's getting fucking weird, because like I've gained, I don't know, 300 kilos because I don't want to. I mean, I'm already doing blackface. I don't also want to be throwing food away. So every time I get back from work, I have to eat all the fucking Nutella.
Americans,
so
this is all,
and then it's like 5,000 calories.
Americans, this is an obvious joke in case anybody's missing the.
Please do not cancel our sweet boy.
The people gonna be trying to cancel. You Gopnik does blackface. No, fuck! It's just a stupid joke.
If you do not understand it, this is a metaphoric analysis slash comedic take on the future of capitalism, which will never give you a cent more, but will just create additional social norms to make you feel better about yourself for going to work. Then maybe you shouldn't listen to me. I don't know. JT and Hakim will kick me out of this podcast. There will be like an additional podcast where I'm included in this one where I'm not
critical
come on,
support.
Guys,
critical support for Comrade Yukovnik.
And Slavs aren't even white, so like, what the fuck?
Oh Lord, no, please, okay, don't. Just wait for the. Wait for a white guy in the Midwest to.
Oh yeah, yep.
Again,
the only criticism I will accept is about wasting Nutella. Everything else, you missed the joke. You missed the point of the joke.
Obvious joke to people. Yeah, all that. Anyways, no need for more disclaimers. Let's not insult the audience, insult the intelligence of our audience. But yeah, generally, there are other, I guess, talking points you can have about limits of capitalism, but they get a lot more boring and a lot more technical. I'll just briefly mention a few, I guess. Just so that people know them, and then you can do your own research. Of course, one of the main ones is something called the falling rate of profit, which has a lot of empirical data supporting it. It's the idea that the rate of return, basically the profits that you make as the years go by on commodities, is decreasing. And this is proven well, you can look up the data on this, but the general idea is that basically capitalists want to produce things as cheaply as possible, right? So they innovate with machinery and techniques and whatnot. They underpay their workers and all that, and the end result is they want to produce commodities as cheaply as possible. With the progress of time and with technology, production of commodities gets cheaper and cheaper, and as a result of this, the rate of return, the rate of profit, the amount of money you actually make on the return is less and less in the long run. And what this will result in eventually is profits or returns that are not even that great enough to reinvest into the circuit of capital to continue. So it's basically
totally
like
happening.
Exactly right. It's kind of like a built-in game over into the capitalist system, and there's several ways of getting out of it. And Marx has described. Marx discussed a few ways of getting out of it. One of the ways, of course, is massive destruction of capital, as happens with, for example, World War II, where you had massive destruction of industry across a continent. Which, if you look at the data, there's actually kind of a tick up. The arrow goes a bit up after World War II because rates of profits increase, because all of a sudden you have to rebuild all these means of production that were there just a couple of years ago. So that's one way. There's several other ways. It gets very boring and technical, but this is an aspect that's just kind of inevitable with capitalism. If we don't cause ourselves to go extinct, then the system will just drive itself into the ground. Another one is the general class contradiction aspect, which is the big Marxist line. You have two massive groups of, not massive groups, excuse me, you have one massive group, the vast majority of humanity, which is the working class, and allied classes, be they peasantry and whatnot in more agrarian societies, versus the ruling class, which is a very small handful of people, and both of them have diametrically opposed interests. One of them wants to work the workers as hard as possible for as long as possible for as low a wage as possible to extract as much profit as possible. Meanwhile, the working class wants to work as little as possible for as much as possible, so that they can make the biggest wage possible to live as comfortably as they can. And this, of course, causes a class struggle, which at points gets heightened, which causes social unrest and eventually revolutions. And this is also an intrinsic part of the system, a inherent social, economic, and political instability that maintains an existence that, well, in the long term, like in a lifetime, is relatively precarious. It's difficult to say that you can live an entire lifetime in one country without seeing at least one massive class upheaval of some kind. And this is the reality of the case if you look at any country in the past 100 years, and looking 100 years into the future will be no different as well. So not to reiterate a Chinese curse, but may you live in interesting times. But yeah, these are just 2 points. There are many others, but it gets fucking boring and technical. What do you guys have to say?
Yeah, you're right, definitely. What you were talking about there, the upheaval, I think, is something that's really important to realize. And in places like the U.S. especially, there is a tendency to think that this is it. We've reached the end of history. And, Francis Fukuyama wrote the book, The End of History, and that was kind of the dominant neoliberal consensus for quite a while. But that's just objectively not the case. I mean, throughout history, there has always been periods of tremendous strife and upheaval. I mean, history has always progressed in ruptures, and when contradictions within an existing system become too acute, then a new system is born. And the same will happen for capitalism. I mean, feudalism gave way to capitalism, several hundred years ago, and hopefully capitalism will eventually give way to socialism once the contradictions inherent in capitalist society become too much to bear. It is almost unfathomable to think that things can continue the way they're trending without some kind of massive upheaval. And we'll see when that happens, what will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But this podcast has been about the limits of capitalism, and there is an outer limit. I mean, if history is to be believed, there will be a final limit to capitalism, and then something else will come after. I think it's foolish to think otherwise.
I think a bearded guy once said something. All hitherto something society something class struggle.
Probably not important.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I guess. Does that wrap us up for today? Do you guys have anything else to add?
I think that'll do it. I think we've covered it. I think TLDR, capitalism bad. Hopefully it explodes. Otherwise, dystopia. Thanks for listening. Yeah. No, this has been a good episode. I think we had some fun with this. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. This has been the Deprogram. I'm JT.
I'm Hakeem.
And I'm Yugot, thank you.
We'll see you next time.